Hi, people. Just want to say a few words on the Australian federal election. If you're joining me from Australia, welcome. Welcome to the channel. Um, Anthony Albanese, it looks like he secured victory, the Labour leader, and he becomes Australia's sixth Prime Minister in a decade. Um, I'm just going to read out a little bit from the CNN report and a few other segments. Um, So Scott Morrison stepping down as leader of the Liberal Party, which in Australia is actually the Conservative Party, a little bit deceptive for some outsiders. It's the equivalent of the British Conservative Party or the American Republicans, I guess. Socially quite conservative. So this from The Guardian. Australia election 2022. Scott Morrison to stand down as Liberal leader after conceding defeat. Labour hopeful of majority government. Scott Morrison to step down as leader after calling Anthony Albanese to concede defeat. Labour to form government, only question whether it's a majority or minority. Liberal family suffered a terrible day. Peter Dutton, I believe he's the defence minister, says Labour claims Reid. Zoe Daniel claims victory in Goldstein. Allegra Spender wins Wentworth from Dave Sharma. That's local constituency results. I watched the prime ministerial debate from February last night. Um, I forget which channel it was on, but it was quite an animated debate. A lot of it was on bread and butter issues, taxes, cost of living, that sort of thing. Um, the segment I'm always interested in when I watch elections outside the UK is on foreign policy, and particularly China. The Labour Party in Australia has been accused of pandering to China. Scott Morrison was quite blunt on this point. He accused Labour politicians of basically getting a green light from Beijing on policy matters. Albanese strongly denied that. Um, I would say this. I think China and China's role in the Pacific and China's influence on other countries. The recent situation in Solomon Islands, for example, the security situation there. Um, that's absolutely vital, I would say, for Australian foreign policy. And Australia obviously is a very close ally of the UK. We will always be close. I hope that continues under Mr. Albanese. Um, So I really, really hope that Australia can have leadership that stands up to Beijing, because there has been evidence of China's malevolent influences. I'm not just talking about espionage, but for example, riling up nationalism on campuses. It's a problem we've had here as well. And I think that is absolutely unacceptable. I think if Chinese students study in Australia, they should respect Australia, and that means not pushing their way around and demanding respect for the motherland. They have to accept that Australia is a democracy and they cannot harass dissidents or human rights activists or China critics. They can have their opinion, but they cannot behave that way. And there is tangible evidence that that has happened. Same in Canada, the same in the UK. Anyway, CNN writes the following. Let's see. Australian voters deliver strong message on climate ending Conservative government's 9-year rule. 9 years, I guess they're going from, Tony Abbott onwards. So let me just get segment. What will Albanese do as Prime Minister? Incidentally, I wasn't sure about his name. It's an unusual name. Apparently, he's of Italian descent, so that's the name. I wasn't sure about that. I wasn't even sure how to pronounce it, to be honest. One of Albanese's first priorities as Prime Minister will be to rebuild relations with foreign leaders. He says Morrison has neglected in recent years. They include Pacific Island leaders, including the Solomon Islands, whose leaders signed a security pact with Beijing, stoking fears that China plans to build its first military base in the Pacific. On Tuesday, Albanese is expected to be in Tokyo for talks with Quad members from the United States, India, and Japan, where they'll discuss priorities to safeguard free passage in the Indo Pacific. The climate crisis was one of the defining issues of the election, as one of the few points of difference between the coalition and Labour, and a key concern of voters according to polls. Marija Taflaga, director of the Australian Politics Study Centre at the Australian National University, the swing towards the Greens is remarkable. I think everyone has been taken by surprise by these results. I think it will mean there will be greater and faster action on climate change more broadly. Australia, of course, suffered devastating bushfires in 2020 and has become more and more of an issue in recent years. Um, I'm not going to comment too much on domestic policy. A lot of those are similar issues that we face in the UK in terms of cost of living and so on. That seems to be a worldwide problem. Um, Australian politics seems to have been quite fractious in recent years. I mean, over the last decade, there's been six prime ministers, including Albanese. Going from the long tenure of John Howard, we then had Kevin Rudd, Julia Gillard, um, let me get this right, Kevin Rudd, Julia Gillard, Tony Abbott, Malcolm Turnbull, Scott Morrison, and now Anthony Albanese. So I think Australia needs some stable government. Morrison's tenure was a little bit longer than the others, at 4 years, but yeah, it's been quite fractious. So I'm not sure how Australians feel about the issue of stability. Obviously, Mr. Albanese has won, and I hope he has a successful premiership. Morrison conceded graciously, as he should. So yeah, advance Australia fair. I just hope that, I hope the best. I love Australia and think it's a great country, and I hope it can be strong in the face of belligerent overseas threats and also continued partnership with allies both in the region and internationally. In the UK, there was some coverage of the fact that Albanese has had Republican sentiment. Of course, it's up to Australia to decide that, but I do feel that if Australia and Canada, for that matter, were to shackle off the, I shouldn't put it that way, but if they were to get rid of the monarchy, I do think it would be a bit of a cut in relations. I mean, I think there'll always be Anglo-Australian relations. We still have relations with the US, and they've been a republic for over 2 centuries. So I'm not saying that if Australia were to become a republic, we suddenly lose relations, but I do think something would be gone. Um, and I just hope Mr. Albanese reaches out. I was very disheartened by the attitude of Paul Keating regarding China actually blaming the West. I think that was preposterous. I think it was a disgrace. Um, and that, to me, is the Australian equivalent of Gerhard Schröder's Eyes of Putin. No liberal democratic leader in the world pander to the Russian and Chinese regimes. I understand realpolitik. I know you can't ignore China economically, but Albanese should remember that during the pandemic, China actually threatened to destroy the Australian wine industry. So I hope Albanese is tough with China. Um, uh, that became a very pesky point in the debate, so he needs to prove that. I think it's a very important point. I said the same thing about the Philippines election recently, whether Marcos will be tough with China or not. It's a vital issue because China's throwing its weight around in that part of the world. Anyway, best wishes for Australia, and that's the result. So let me know your thoughts if you are in Oz. If what do you think? Are you Labour supporter, Liberal supporter, disillusioned? What's your thoughts? Let me know. Cheers.